came early.
I'll take it. Although it's really dry here where I live. It's like we're right on the, the Rocky Mountains and the desert. So we get just beautiful. We get all 4 seasons and it's gorgeous, but it's really dry because of the desert side of the mountains. Kind of like Salt Lake City or Denver temperature for us.
Oh, I thought you lived near a beach, but it wasn't. It was like desert you were walking in.
Correct. Yeah, no, Idaho is, the Oregon coast or Washington, Oregon, California coast is probably like 10-hour drive.
Wow, so far.
Yeah, I'm like right along the Rockies. We're kind of pulled in quite a bit. Oh my God.
I need a cushion to sit on.
Oh yeah.
It's better.
Okay, so tell me how you're doing.
I don't know what's happened to me. I've been really mischievous.
Oh, you mean you're being a normal person?
Is that what that is?
Yeah, like living your life?
I don't know, just finding things really funny.
I love it. Okay, so, how are you doing with, well, tell me this. How often are you thinking about food, your weight, your body?
Weight, body, not at all.
Like fleeting moments, maybe, just minimal, or not at all.
Like a daft analogy, but I feel like a great winged condor gliding, and beneath me there's like a volcanic flow coming from a volcano, a hot ash, and every so often the bit jumps up and singes my wings. It doesn't burn my skin, it just like pops out of it.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, there that is, and you keep on going. Yeah, because there's conditioning, there is some conditioning there, but it's meaningless. It should be meaningless to you.
Yeah, right. I'm not hooking into it. It just pops up and kind of gives me a bit of and then I just don't.
Yeah, it's like, whatever. So, is this different than what you experienced before?
Yeah.
A year ago when we...
It's like, when you kind of bounce back what it's like when you feel sorry for yourself and you see the tone of voice and the mannerisms about what it's like, oh, I'm so fallen for me. Mm-hmm. It's like, I don't know, I just think it's quite funny.
Well, do you see that state of being and that do you see it as a position now? Like that's how you're positioning yourself.
Yeah, choice of choosing to be like that.
Right. Most people don't know that. Right. Would you have known that was a choice you were making?
No.
Mm-mm.
Why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I feel? Anybody would feel like that.
Right. Well, because what you're not questioning is the viewpoint you're taking, right? You can take a bunch of different ways to look at something. And your viewpoint is, that viewpoint in particular is one of powerlessness and victimization. Yeah. And then feeling like life should be better, right? The idea that there's something better out there.
Yeah. Why does it always happen to me? That's a big one.
Yeah, it's all about me and why is my life so horrible and yeah, that's a position. And so when you recover or you get relative awareness around it, you can see, well, why would you choose to be in that position? Right? Like, if you were to describe this, like that position of victimization or martyr, poor me, pity party, if you could explain to someone what you got out of it? Because there's something you get out of it. Otherwise, what did you get out of it?
I was hoping people would pay me attention by feeling sorry for me.
Right. Well, don't you think too that it might have played a variety of roles for you? One of it is it gives you some sense of specialness. Like, I am special because of how terrible my life is. And so you kind of get off on telling people how terrible your life has been.
Oh, yeah.
Did you ever exaggerate it because of that? Was there ever...
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I love that you're admitting that, because it's inside of it, you would never admit that, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're like almost catastrophizing it. You know, I see this commonly with teenagers. Don't you think? You know, you work with students who are really young.
Yeah. I don't get close to them, though. That's the thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when you catastrophizing something to be horrible really gives you a reason to do, if you think about it, it's like by making your history worse than it really was or blowing it out of proportion, in a way it gives you a sense of entitlement to do things that you want to do that you know aren't necessarily in line with good integrity. Make sense?
Yeah, because it is just about me.
Right.
Me.
Don't you think, too, that by being in that victim position, you also benefit by, it's like by catastrophizing how terrible your life has been, how horrible your parents are, and how terrible your life is. In a way, it's like blaming. It's like I can place blame. Victimization, can you see that's kind of like placing blame?
Yeah. Well, it's that thing again, isn't it? Well, you would feel like that, wouldn't you? Anybody would feel like can blame it on everything.
It's like it's a way to not take any responsibility either. I don't want to take any responsibility, partly because would you agree that you were critical and judgmental of the circumstance?
Oh yes, very resistant, resentful, full of resentment.
And so if we were to like say in specific to the whole mental health concept that you had, were your parents in the mental health field?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why I was confused. Yeah. They worked at a mental hospital, correct? They did, and then they'd come home and be very critical and judgmental of these people. And then they would try to parent you by threatening you're going to be just like that. You know, not realizing that basically they were defining you as mentally ill, and your response to prove them otherwise essentially created this illness, right? You could say, well, I wasn't born this way, but it was promoted. And to be able to blame them because you personally were shaming it and judging it and not wanting it, it would be so much easier to blame them for how you psychologically, all the struggles you've lived over the course of 20 years. I mean, you've been hospitalized. Is that correct? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, for the physical consequences of
you didn't go to a mental institution or but you've had inpatient recovery, right?
No, I was hospitalized because I really damaged my body from the bulimia, but not
for some
counselling
on
the NHS.
And you've had like psychiatric
evaluation many times. Yeah.
And you were put on medication and
a lot.
Right.
Massive dose of Prozac, like 60 milligrams a day, and I think the normal dose is 20.
Did they ever talk to you about the narcissism or even the martyrs? They just trusted your story about your parents.
They just kind of, poor you, that must have been terrible. No wonder you're so sick. We'll give you some tablets to make you feel better.
Do you think that
how miserable your life was, and the more you talk about how miserable your life was, the better you'll all feel? How does that work?
Well, I think that the assumption is that you need compassion, and so by pitying, and I don't think people realize this. Like, I don't think those therapists or psychologists or psychiatrists that were, they never question the story.
Yeah.
Right? But you can see how they might be walking on the eggshells around it, right?
I've been reading the David Hawkins book.
Which one? What do you think?
I absolutely love it. I got about halfway through and he kept referring to a psychotherapist called Frankel who'd been in Auschwitz.
Oh, yes.
To that book. So I started reading that book and I love it. He says when he gets to the therapy part, he was talking to I think it was a Freudian therapist who said explaining the therapy is we get patients to talk about things that are very difficult to say, and he said, oh well, my therapy is about getting patients to listen to things that are very difficult to hear.
Yeah.
And I thought, my God, that's Robin. That's Robin. That song. Oh, I did not want to hear the things she was saying. No way.
No, but didn't you kind of knew there was truth in what I was saying, though. So even if it was creating that cognitive dissonance, there was, you couldn't deny the truth in some of it. The hardest part is because you've done such an incredible job avoiding these feelings. When you come to get help, and I'm going into those feelings, it would be understandable why you wouldn't want to talk to me for a year, right? You wouldn't want to. You would be like, yeah, I'm done. I don't need her work. I'm healed. Yeah, la 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 la. Yeah. You know, and so many people project onto me that victim mentality as if I'm the one making them miserable.
Yeah, as if you're judging.
Well, I'm not judging. I'm just talking about it, and that feeling you said that I'm bringing up things that make you extremely uncomfortable. They take that and as if I'm the persecutor, not their denial. Right? They're not seeing their denial of the truth is really where their suffering comes from. It's not the actual truth. It's the denial of it. It's it's criticizing of the truth, right? And so if I'm speaking something that may be hitting a level of truth for them, but they don't want it to be exposed, they don't want to address it, they don't feel they can handle it, they would then project onto me that feeling of insecurity as if I'm attacking them. Happens all the time.
Yeah.
And I know it's occurring. It's just like, if they want to project, that continued martyr victim position, you know, like a few sessions ago, and I was like, oh, there's the narcissism. Oh, look it's all about you. You could have been like, Robin's an asshole. She's not very nice.
I did not like it one bit.
Yeah, but don't you agree when you sat down and thought about it? If you want to recover, if you want to get better,
it exposed the truth, though. It exposed me to the truth. It showed me the delusion.
Right.
It exposed the truth.
Don't you think, too, that when that illusion is exposed, it gives you opportunity to stop what you're doing? And to see, too, if I was willing to give this up and accept what that truth is, I can move beyond this. I don't have to keep on staying in this space of denial, deflection, constant,
hard work.
Oh, it's not just hard work, Derry. It's crazy train, intense, obsessive, compulsive, over the top, amazing output, right?
People at work have been smiling at me so much this week. I am not joking. I am up to here with work. I've had 120 examination papers to mark in 4 working days. I'm teaching every single day. I'm the only full-time member of staff on the module with 400 students on. Oh, normally I'd be such a martyr. I'd be like, oh.
Poor me. My life is terrible.
I've been breezing around.
I love it.
Nothing about it.
Oh.
Mischievous with it as well, because there's somebody who sits in an office opposite me who's got quite a cushy number. So I'm like, I'm just coming back with another 200 exam papers, and then I come back, I'm just going to teach another 4 hours, and then I'm coming back, sorry. It's just like, it's not, look how awful it is for me.
Yeah, you're joking around about it. You're being funny. It feels good.
It doesn't. I don't think he knows
What to do.
know what to do. He doesn't know what to say or what to do. It's really amusing me.
Funny.
It's not at his expense. I'm just being.
No, you're being funny.
Well,
So back to this, idea of being in denial. That to me is, I don't think people know that's what they're doing. I mean, were you even consciously aware?
no idea. Not a clue. Not a clue. Oh, in the David Hawkins book, he said this doesn't go away.
What part?
This, because we talked last time, he said I got to courage.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And he says in his book, as you go through those stages, it doesn't go away. You don't, it's here.
No, if you reach that awareness, you'd have to have brain damage to become unaware.
Yeah.
That's what I find so fascinating, right? Because this is where, why would you go back? How could you go back? It's like you'd have to become unaware of what you're aware of. It'd be like saying it'd be like something that you study, expertise that you study. It'd be like saying, how do you go back to the knowledge you were when you were a freshman in college? Is that possible? No.
We talked about this last time, that the fact that I ran away and didn't want to talk to you anymore showed that.
Well, you weren't ready for it. You weren't ready, and that's okay. That to me is like, it is a process of personal will. And I might have been presenting something to you that was faster than your karma could handle. It was beyond your learning curve. And
also, it's a healing time, I think, because I've been so violent to my body up until when I first spoke to you, that it was big physical. I don't know if you remember, I got a lot of physical ailments when I was remember.
Oh, yeah.
After the binging stopped and after the purging stopped, the binging carried on a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I needed that time to get used to eating, to get used to buying food, putting it in the cupboard and eating it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's nothing in the house to eat.
Yeah.
Every time I ate, I had to go out and buy something. I was too scared to have food in the house.
Yeah, and you could see that maybe you just weren't ready to face some of for whatever, there's a readying process, I think, for people. I've had clients who started working with me 6 years ago, and then 2 years later came back, and then a year later, and it's like every time they reach back out, they're in a different place, right? So, and I know for me, in my own personal recovery experience, the moment I recovered was the exact moment I should have recovered. Not a freaking minute sooner.
Yeah.
Right? And so as much as it's like, when I've never unrecovered ever. Right? And it was freaking intense and quite miraculous, but it's no different than that moment you had there's a moment, right? It doesn't take time. It takes this concoction, if you want, of willfulness, humility, taking responsibility, grace, forgiving it all. I mean, it's like a concoction that promotes this end result, and it happens like that. But what it takes up until that point, right? It could take a lot of suffering. It could take years. But that moment is a moment, and it's over. It's like, and this is why I believe it's a syndrome. It's like a survival syndrome, because it's why it wouldn't respond to Prozac. It's not going to respond. If you look at a disease or something where it's an actual brain chemical caused problem, that would respond to chemicals. A side effect, right? You could say, and that's very small. There's a very small percentage of people, we could say, actually have chemical imbalances at their foundation, right? Whereas majority of the people out there, they're not born that way. It's a consequence. It's like the brain is responding to what environment they are putting themselves in that promotes this outcome. So when you look at like eating disorders, not as a disorder, but as a syndrome, can you see how then you recover like that? Because what we've done is we've kind of taken, a syndrome is a variety of things together, right? It's basically, well, with this and then this and then this. So when they're combined, we see that this creates this syndrome, like battered wife syndrome, Stockholm syndrome. When you remove 1, 2, and the whole thing unravels, the syndrome disappears, right? So with someone with battered wife syndrome or Stockholm syndrome, they don't respond to depression medication. It doesn't change, the fact that they constantly want to go back to their captor, or that they want to support their captor or defend their captor. So when you look at this as a syndrome, that's the only way that makes sense to me for why I recovered like this, you recovered like that. Everybody that actually gets to that point, it's that fast, and it's transformative on so many levels, and there's no medication involved.
Is it like if you're in a cult and you're
yes,
programmed, and it's about breaking that programming?
Correct. And what you get out of it, and what it serves you, and why you are okay with the abusiveness. And it's like a variety of Stockholm syndrome. Like battered wife syndrome is a version of Stockholm syndrome. You don't necessarily have a literal captor who's holding you hostage.
Yeah.
Right? In this case, your captor, was yourself, but you're holding yourself to belief systems, right? So this is why it's so kind of hard, I think, for people to see it, because it's not like you're being held hostage by your parents. You're being held hostage by yourself based on belief systems.
Yeah.
Right? And it's a belief system, not an actual person that you're trying to get love and affection from. And you're trying to get love and affection from yourself. So you, in a sense, are holding you're the asshole holding yourself hostage to some concept. It's really holding your body hostage too, when you think about how you relate to the body.
Another consequence of medication is that when the doctor tells you it's not your fault, it's a chemical imbalance, but it just pours oil in the poor me's. What's always happened to me, I can't do anything about it. It takes away any responsibility for your own welfare or well-being.
Yeah, for me,
Blame, isn't it? You've got something to blame it on.
Not only, so it does enable the fact that you are now blaming it on your poor fucked up genetics, but what you're also doing is you're basically saying there's no hope. You just, for me, that's what it felt like, because they approach that this is a disease, that you're prone to this because of some genetic predisposition on your mother or father's side, that you will suffer from this to some degree your entire life, was essentially like saying your misery and darkness and this suffering that you're asking help with, you're going to always have it. So for me, that was the beginning of suicidal thoughts. I don't think that was the intention, right, of the person that's like giving me this pharmaceutical talk around the disease model. It wasn't their intention. The intention, and actually the summits and the conversations they've had about the disease model and why they're trying to get rid of it, is because they found the initial idea was that because these behaviors and addictions often are associated with intense shame and feelings that we are terrible, horrible human beings, they thought that by saying it's a disease, that it would relieve that feeling of shame about that I am a bad person. That was the intention. So you could look at that and go, well, that was honorable, integrous intention, but there's a lot of unintended consequences to blaming it on genetics or the food, saying the food's addictive, right? Because that's another thing that's another approach to binge eating, is to say that you're addicted to food. So it's like saying it's the food and your brain that don't work well together. Never really looking at your beliefs, the issues you have with body image, the culture of thin supremacy, the entire diet culture, cult that is demonizing food and how that impacts our primal wiring. There's no getting beyond that, because when you say the food is addictive and your brain is, genetically predisposed to addiction, that's it. Now we're done.
Yeah,
I went
on a 12-week treatment, 2 hours a week.
So that was outpatient, like an outpatient program?
I used to go to the eating disorders clinic for 2 hours. It was like an educational program. And what they told us there was, you can't recover from this. You'll have it for the rest of your life. We're going to show you how to manage it. And the way of managing it was keeping a diary of what you eat, writing down everything you eat. If you write it down and you're aware of it, use these coping strategies to, if you feel a compulsion to overeat, use these coping strategies. Go and wash your hair.
Right. Well, don't you agree? Those are things that we could recommend if we really don't have a freaking clue what's going on.
Yeah.
So when was that?
Not that long ago.
Okay. See, I recovered 20 years ago, right? You're saying the same shit I was told.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't that long ago.
5 years? Within 5 years? 4 years?
Between 5 and 10 years ago.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to me, but I'm going to give, let's give that grace. How many people who have had this have recovered adequately to now actually explain it? I'm still struggling. I'm struggling to explain this, right? I'm efforting really hard, and then to create a system around how to help people recover, right? So I give it a lot of grace. It's, if you haven't been able to actually explain it, right? Like at this point, you could say, oh, this desire to be thinner was the way I compensated for this. It has nothing to do with the food. My issues with food are a direct problem stimulated from my extreme restrictions and the fact that I had already committed to a purge. So that's a sideshow, right?
Yeah.
I know. I visualize the eating disorder. It's like you're juggling, okay? And the eating disorder is basically like a ball on fire. You're still juggling, right? You just added some sideshow ball on fire you're focused on. Right?
That's a good analogy.
It's just some side problem that requires your attention. If it's not the ball on fire, it's you're juggling and you just added like a saw, and you're like, you have to focus on the saw. The problem is that you're juggling, not the saw. Or the ball's on fire. It's the juggling that you're doing. You know what I mean? So it's a huge distraction, and you could probably see that now. Like, oh, that was just my way of trying to feel better about myself because I was such a failure with something completely different. I know. It's really not that complicated, but it is. But when you know what I mean? When you think about it, you're like, well, this was actually pretty simple and easy for us to kind of just completely unwind. Obviously, when you were ready.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When you're ready, it was just like, how many hours of conversation? The original 10 plus 3 hours more?
Yeah.
12, maybe 15 hours of talking.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it's really not that complicated. To me,
that's 2 working days, isn't it?
Yeah.
2 days at the office.
And how many years did you actually suffer with intense bulimia?
Over 40 years.
40 years. And how often were you binging and purging? On average?
Oh, God.
5 times a day on average? 4 times a day? Twice a day? On average?
5 times a week. Average.
Yeah, because there were days you binged 10 times, 12 times in one day, right? Binge because you're purging.
Yeah. Some days 3 or 4 times. Some days as many as, dare I say, 20 times.
Oh, isn't it amazing? I know. Some people are like, really? You're lying. No, I'm not. Because if you're purging, it can be all day long. That's all you do all day long. Binge and purge and binge and purge and binge and purge.
It's 6 o'clock.
Sorry about that.
I really don't care.
It's built into it's like a piece of malware that I can't get rid of.
Yeah, it is. And it's like, oh, I describe it. I just wrote in the book around the binging aspect. It's like you go to you're thirsty for water and you go to this beautiful stream and you're like, I'll have a couple of drinks, but you get to the stream and it's this raging river that just sucks you down into this river and you're just being whisked away in this current that you thought was just a little stream. I'm just going to have a cup of water. But no, and that's what a binge is.
Yeah, good. That's a really, really good way of explaining it.
Right, because that's what it feels like. I just want a cup of water. There's a stream. Only a cup. Yeah. And you're thirsty, you're thirsty for water. It's very similar, with
I start at 6 o'clock in the morning. I start as soon as I open my eyes in the morning and go on until I pass out at night.
Yeah. Yeah, and so many people think, too, I don't know, it's, when you really, really think about it, was this that hard for you to end? You just let it go. It's psychologically terrifying, but
to the hills and it got difficult, and it got not difficult, and it got a bit challenging because my natural instincts to run away, but I didn't. I stayed put. I sat. Right.
That part to me is the scariest part. But when you look at the life you just lived for 40 years, which is more scary?
Oh, yes.
I know that's the other part too that I think has to become very clear. And we had talked about this a couple sessions ago. What is more scary? Your fear of what you don't know or what you know? Right? What you know is horrendous. It is horrendous torture. It is hell. It is Dante's Inferno. It is the darkest place on the darkest corner of the darkest universe. And what you're afraid of is just like small pickings in comparison, But you have to come to that realization, like, I'm going to die this way. My fear is telling me I'm going to die. So I have nothing to lose because either direction is going to be death. This is a torturous, horrendous, I'm being like ripped apart. Your life was like being heaved off of a cliff and being dismembered. And it is some of the most horrendous aspects of hell. That's what you lived in for 40 years. Facing the actual reality of death, because that's what you have to sit in, is this reality of death. And it feels like the Grim Reaper, it feels like something outside of you is going to kill you. When you actually sit through it, it's so fleeting and it's nothing in comparison. Although in the moment, it feels like you're going to be obliterated into complete extinction, right? It feels like if I go that way, I'm going to become extinct. Well, which one's worse? For me, the life I was living was worse than being extinct. The Robin I knew was going to completely disintegrate into non-existence, and so be it.
When I first spoke to you, I hadn't eaten anything for 6 weeks.
I know, and then you had binged and purged like 12 times that day, I think.
Yeah, so I've just been living on Slim Shakes. It was just awful. It was so vile. And anything anything solid that went in my mouth came straight back out again.
Yep.
So I do think after I first spoke to you, I did need that period of letting my body recover before I was ready to come back and do the work.
Yeah. Well, and to face the truth of what I was telling you, because I was telling you the same thing. It was just too much. You didn't want to see it. You were too scared in the moment to go through the whole process.
Yeah.
Right? You went through. So, yeah. And so even the first initial work we did a year ago made a big impact for you. Yeah. It kept you alive.
It did. It was incredible because I had a year of shopping for food, having food in the cupboards, and eating meals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty exciting.
I really needed that, I think.
Yeah, and that's another reason why I feel like I can trust the process. You know, as much as I'm guiding people, they're the ones that are guiding the process, right? Because I can't force you. That end result that I'm painting the picture of, it's your map, right?
Yeah.
So however it is, here's the end goal, which is where you're at today, right? This was my goal for you.
That was really clever, you know, when you said, don't make me your mom. I'm not your mom.
Yeah. I don't know.
That's something that I would.
You would do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I won't do it. But I for whatever reason, had some intuitive feel that might have been happening. I don't even know. See, I have no plan. I have no process.
That's really insightful because I would have created this codependency thing.
Oh yeah, and I wouldn't have participated, so it would have sucked.
But that just snapped me out a bit. I thought, oh right, God.
Yep, I'm doing this for myself. I'm not doing it for Robin. I'm doing it for me. I get nothing out of your recovery. Nothing. You know what I mean? Other than I feel so happy for you. Like, you being in this space to me is like, it's amazing for you. I'm already in this space, so it's not like it improves where I'm at, right?
Yeah.
Whether you recover or not, does not change where I'm at. Because I would never give it up for someone else's approval. Or, you know, like, because not only that, because it's not mine to attach to, you know, I don't know how else to explain it other than I'm aware this state of being exists. I'm aware of wherever I'm at. I don't know what I don't know that's above where I'm at, right? Someday, I don't know. So I can have a sense of where you are, and I can have a sense of how I got here. But I don't know necessarily the path for you. I can just give you the essence of what this is like. I can put up a mirror and say, look at the mirror. Look at this. Here's what's going on, right? If you want something different. And the other thing that I think is so hard is a lot of people assume that you're going to know exactly where you're going, and then we're going to formulate a plan to get there. That's not how it works. There is no concept of this. There was no way for me to explain where you're at right now. You did not have a concept of this end result in any way. You didn't even know this existed, right?
No.
How could I have even explained this to you? How could I have said there's going to be a state of being where you feel really easygoing and you're not obsessing about anything and you really don't care about anything, but you do and you don't, and it's happy and loving and you can enjoy yourself and you get to be creative and it's not. How do you explain that?
It's like I'm a personality transplant.
Correct.
That playful, mischievous.
Well, that's the truth of whatever is real in you. And you didn't even create that. You're just experiencing what that is, and it's just...
Yeah, I didn't will it to come on.
No.
Today I'm going to do this.
No, it's spontaneous. And so you just got to let it be. As long as you know it's not malicious. You're not trying to hurt anybody. You're not trying to manipulate people. You're just being the truth of whatever that is. And you don't even have to claim it as your own because you're human and pretty much we're all human and humans are mischievous. We're kind of like the monkeys. We think we're smarter, but we're really the same.
It's not that I've become saintly.
No.
The head's still like, there was a silly thing at the weekend with my neighbours, and I thought, oh, I'm a bit jealous. Oh, what's that?
Right?
And I thought, you don't.
No, because you're human. Okay, so this is one respect that you will read.
Really, and before I would have been really upset. I would have sulked for a couple of weeks. I would have been nervous or going back to the car, and it was just completely fabricated in my head and had nothing whatsoever to do with what they were doing.
Nuh-uh. Correct. It's all freaking. It's like, but you don't question it. You think it's real and true.
But I didn't. I just observed it. I just thought, hey, what's going on?
Yeah, well, what would you rather? At that point, you can either continue to go that way or you can not give a shit.
Yeah, the latter.
Right? Like, whatever. I'm enjoying my life. They can have their life. Whatever. It's all an illusion anyway. Stuff is stuff. It's just stuff.
Yeah.
Nothing can add to or take away from this state of being. Really look at that and think about that. If you get a brand new freaking car, let's just say a Mercedes or some gorgeous luxury, whatever it is, does that make this any better?
No. Because that truth is still there.
And it's not material. It's not
yeah.
That's kind of a big deal, right? It's not a material or physical. It's an awareness. It's a state of consciousness. It's not intellect. This is not intellect. You have plenty of that. And it couldn't do this for you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It comes from, it's like, one way I try to visualize it is we do have this animal part of the brain that's wired to survive, and it's very animalistic in nature. And as Dr. Hawkins would say, that area of the brain is wired to be self-serving and to want to get stuff and want to keep it, and really it's wired to do that out of the fear of death. And so we create these concepts of who we think we are based on our fear of death and what we think keeps us from dying. But in the end, when you're willing to die and willing to surrender your ego identity, it basically makes that area of the brain less powerful and less manipulative. We can't get rid of it, but we can desensitize the seriousness of it, right? So you can have a moment of, oh, they have more stuff, and then you can laugh at yourself. And you can go, oh, poor me, I have less stuff. Who cares? You can the animal part of your brain is going to stay there. There's like moments where, my initial instinct is to become, judgy, right? And then I can make fun of myself for that. And say, oh, I'm so special in my upper cloud of,
That's what I've been doing, making fun of myself. Not in a deprecating way.
No, it's the animal. It's the reality of the animal part of our brain we cannot escape. It's going to be there. It's just transcending it, right? It's kind of like it's there, and it's funny.
Feeling jolly.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, it's silly. It's childish. It's like, oh, I'm so amazing. It's everything's about me, And you just don't take it serious.
I just realised you just said to me that you've got plenty of the intellectual part, and normally, what is that? Oh, me? No.
Not me. I'm not smart enough, even though inside your head you're like, I'm the smartest person on the planet.
But I didn't buy into it. I just went, yeah.
It's true.
Which good, probably. Wow, that's so different. I'm just reacting to things really differently.
Well, I know. See, I couldn't have told you we couldn't have trained you to do this or had a program to we're going to emphasize this aspect and you're going to work on it and we're going to practice. No, it comes naturally. It's just a natural state of being. So it's like, this is why I have really studied Dr. Hawkins' work, because he he's like the guru of consciousness, and his way of describing it is that this is like an energy space that we all have access to, and we're all the same in that space. It's not you that's special or me that's enlightened, it's the space that's that way. So we can't claim it, right? It's not like I'm intuitive. This state is intuitive, right? I don't know. Have you heard any? You might not. You're just getting started studying his work. You're just getting started. So it's like I can't even claim the work I've done with you, because it's actually a lot of this knowledge and awareness that I have is coming from this level of consciousness, not me. I'm not talented over here. I'm just in that space. And I can lose that space as soon as I become that, I go into the ego, Robin, the concept of whatever I am, right? So if I can surrender that concept and I can open myself up to the integrity of guiding and helping you get out of that, all of a sudden I get all this information.
Is that like that sensation of gliding over all the churning stuff underneath, like I'm looking. I can't know how to describe it. Like there was jealousy. It was there, but I didn't run with it. I just thought.
Well, it could be because you're aware of where it came from, the relative concept of it. Like jealousy would occur if I believe that accumulated stuff makes their life better. And that if you don't have stuff, my life is worse. So therefore the illusion is if I have stuff, then I will be better and they're better and poor me. If you can see that, of course, under that belief pattern, the emotion of jealousy would be there. But I don't believe in the accumulation of stuff will make me happy anymore. So what happens to that feeling? Diminishes. So there's moments, Dr. Hawkins would say, you still kind of go like this in certain respects. Yeah, in certain respects. In terms of your truth, body image, psychological illness image, whatever that is, you will never probably go down again because you're so over it. You don't care, right? So when you get to the place of I don't need materials, whether they come or go, I'm indifferent. I can enjoy material goods. I can appreciate having running water and having a running car and the beauty of it. I can actually enjoy it, but it's not who I am, nor do I need it. So do you see? So you wouldn't actually promote it. You wouldn't attach the symbolism to supremacy with, if you drove around a Rolls Royce. You wouldn't be thinking I'm superior as you drive it, right? Or you have a driver driving, you drive it. You wouldn't even play that role.
Yeah, whereas before,
you would have totally opened the windows, started waving at everybody. Hi, I have a Rolls Royce. You know what I mean?
I do. I really do.
Whereas now, whether you're in that position or not, it does not. You can see it's just an illusion. And someone who promotes you because of that, they have an illusion in their mind of what it is. And they get to experience jealousy. Can you see that? Yeah. I'm not sure you'll ever experience jealousy again. You might never. Because it's, what is jealousy? Where does that come from?
It wasn't about things. It was about being left out from friendship. I felt excluded.
It's lacking. Yeah, yes. You just said that it comes from a state of lacking. So exclusion and lacking friendship, that would give you that would definitely, like, their life is better and I'm lacking that experience.
Yeah.
Do you need that to be in this space? No. You know what's amazing too in this space?
My relationship. It's only been a couple of days, Robin. How's that? My relationship with them is much better than it's ever been.
Well, of course. See, this is the thing. Now that you're not in your paranoia, self-centered.
Don't reject me. Don't say anything horrible to me. I can't cope with it.
Say
Don't
that.
look at me I'll crumble.
Oh yeah. See, at this point, you're just like, if they like me, cool. If they don't, I don't give a shit. So you're just connecting. So what I was saying is, when you come into this space, you're no longer self-centered and actually self-defensive. Shields and covers and blah, you're more likely to actually be approachable, and you can actually appreciate other people. You're no longer filtering them through shame and judgment either. Like, oh, look at them. They think they're so much better than me, and they're so self-centered, when in reality, you're just projecting yourself onto them. You won't do that anymore, and so you're more likely to connect with people. And even if they were, let's just say they were in a lower state of survival mode, you won't participate. You'll recognize it when you hear it and see it, and you're just going to be kind.
Wonderful.
Right? So I have friends that are in survival mode. I don't necessarily bring them into my safe zone, because they're one way Dr. Hawkins described it is, it's like a snake. Do you really want to hang out with a snake? And it's not like they're bad. They're just in that state of mind. So you give them space. You respect it. You respect that state of mind. It deserves respect. You were a dangerous person a few days ago.
I was.
I know. You just
judgmental and harsh.
I know. And you could create anything you wanted to believe about anybody, and you would believe it, and you would treat them that way. And they'd be like, wow, I don't even know what. And you would literally think, and that's what I meant. It's like, you'll meet people in that state of mind, and what you'll do is give them respect and distance. Like walking around. You don't walk right at a snake that's hissing at you. You give it space. If there's a cat going, what are you going to do? Walk up to it? No.
So manipulative.
You just walk around them. You give them the
Me.
Yeah.
So manipulative.
You were a little snake.
Not me.
All wound up.
I hate.
Right? Do you see why you probably didn't have friends? I know. Well, because it's true.
It's not hilarious that I didn't have friends. Why am I finding it so funny?
Because it is funny. Because it's true. It's like, holy shit, I was that wound up little snake hissing and shaking my tail and then crying about why no one wants to play with me. As everybody's like, oh shit, there's a snake. We're just going to walk around her. We'll wave.
Oh dear.
Because some people have that discernment, right? And you could see at this point, you're going to have a radar of all your snake radar is like ding, 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 because you've been one. Oh, and you're going to feel sorry for that little snake that's feeling sorry for itself, but yet hissing and shaking its tail at everybody. It's like, okay. You deserve respect in that state of mind and distance.
Yeah, you told last time we talked, you said it was a state of complete innocence. You just don't know.
You have no clue. No, you're just stuck in a evolution. If you think about it too, it's not it's miserable. It's dangerous. Miserable, dangerous, manipulative, full of lying, full of denial, full of cognitive distortion. I mean, think about politics. That's basically what that is. And you're doing it because you believe it's the right thing to do, and it'll give you a sense of freedom. Not realizing that most of it's a trap. You're just trapped inside this state of being, and no one in there knows exactly really what they're doing. And you can rationalize and justify anything, which then removes your awareness of what you're doing. It's totally innocent. Totally. So someone listening to this would go, but what about people who molest and murder? Yep. I'm talking about them too.
Yeah.
It's true. They don't really freaking know what they're doing. of course they know there's something wrong with it, but in the moment, that impulsive moment, just like binge eating, you know you're hurting the body. You know that it's causing all this stuff, but in that moment, it's the right decision based on whatever emotion you're having.
Yeah.
So how are we going to sit there and go, that was wrong? Well, no, it wasn't wrong. Under the circumstance, eating food or purging gave you a sense of safety. Should you not do that? I mean, our wiring is to be safe.
It does say something like that in the Bible, doesn't it? It says there's a time for all things.
Yeah.
Killing, cruelty, there's a time for it because
it serves a purpose for whatever reason. Yeah, there's entire countries in that snake state of mind.
That's all that can happen in those circumstances. That's the time for that because that's
the animal brain. We're dangerous. We're freaking parasites and we're dangerous in those environments. It's true. You are extremely dangerous. I was dangerous in that state of mind. Something I remember I became aware of is when I was going to commit suicide, I realized at some point that state of mind was so dangerous that if I had someone else to blame, I would have murdered that person. I was in a state of mind to murder. It was amazing to me to be aware of that. I'm a dangerous person. If I was having this codependent drama bullshit with another human being, not only would I kill myself, I'd kill that other person.
Yeah, not murderous.
Yeah, I was willing to kill myself, and if I believed, like if it wasn't my body that was harming me or that fear of death by fatness, let's just say I was fear of death by being alone, like a codependent toxic marriage. When I hear of someone who kills themselves and their family, I'm like, that's that state of mind. It's that state of mind. I've been in that spot.
It sounds like a fine line between homicide and suicide.
Correct.
Yeah.
It is a fine line. And that's how a lot of people justify killing people.
Yeah.
In that intense state of mind. And you're freaking nuts. But you're not. You're in that dark animalistic space of being. It's like, I go back to, the Jonestown, I think, or is it Jamestown, where everybody drank the Kool-Aid and they killed all the children and they killed by drinking the Kool-Aid. What do you think that leader, that cult leader, was in that state of mind? If I'm going down, this entire group of children, women, innocent people, because I refuse to go into that space of humility and it's too scary. So everybody's going to die.
Like those poor boys at Columbine.
Totally. And every other school shooting, they're in that state of mind.
Just put that way before, Robin. Yeah.
That's how dangerous you can be. And we can sit here and be like, that's terrible. But in reality, they're in a primal state of mind that took millennia of evolution, which to some degree is why we still exist today. And it's a state of mind that allows one tribe to completely murder another tribe, to include all the animals and the children, to survive, right? So we can sit here and play their demonic, but in reality, that is a manifestation of evolution over millennia, and are we to say that that's wrong? Of course, we can evolve away from that. I don't need to kill anybody at this point. What does it do? I'm not in that state of mind, but I have that. I wouldn't have killed someone else, but I definitely recognized that space of where I would have been capable of it if I had attached that terror to another human being. If I was blaming it on someone else, but I was blaming it on the body. Fortunately for me, right? Because now everybody else is safe while I go commit suicide and kill this body that was torturing me, right? In its perfection.
Wow.
Yeah.
I really like those boys at Columbine.
It is. No, for real.
And turn the weapons on themselves. So sad, isn't it, really?
It is, because they just are, too, when you're a child like that, you don't have that the wisdom of relative awareness, even adults that do have relative awareness, stuck in this kind of vicious cycle, as you have been for 40 years. Doesn't matter age, really.
Yeah, you said earlier, like being a teenager.
Yeah. No.
A 60-year-old teenager.
For reals. No, it is. It's just you're stuck in that emotional state, and you're not only that, but you're stuck in that primal rage, you know, of defending your life from illusions that you think are real. You know, I think that people never question their stories. They never question the story. You go get help, and the therapist is essentially validating your story of horror and like it's so bad, and your parents are the worst people on the planet, and you are special because of that.
Over and over and over again, ad nauseum. I knew that was not going to work.
It's 6:30.
Bloody enough of that. Going over the same old.
Mm-hmm.
Over and over again. But you'll feel better if you talk about it. No.
Well, if you talk about it and question your goddamn self, you know.
That's different. Yeah.
And admit you're feeling sorry for yourself. You know, you have to go into admitting this stuff and actually seeing it for what it is to actually realize that these are the sources of why I'm so miserable. What is a pill going to do for that? Nothing.
I thought my life was so different and special and unique that it'd be really worth writing a book about it all because...
Well, you could. The stories you were telling yourself.
Yeah.
And if you wrote a book about it, you would have totally lied on so many levels about how terrible I was because you're secretly getting off on it. That's the thing. When you are a victim or a martyr, you secretly get off on it. It's like this sense of like, oh, I'm special, and oh, my story's worse than yours, and there's something you're getting out of it, and which is why you hold on to it, even though you're miserable.
I really did think I was really special. My story's really special.
And Robin just doesn't know because she has never suffered the way I have.
Got it, yeah.
Right.
God.
Sure. It's all the same suffering. Suffering is suffering. It's pretty much the same to me.
The story doesn't matter, does it?
It doesn't. It doesn't freaking matter what your goddamn story is. It doesn't. It's all the same. If you're a victim and you're angry about it, pretty much tastes the same as everybody else's anger victim story. And it can be something as simple as I'm angry and a victim of the fact that my parents abandoned me, or I'm angry and a victim of the fact that my husband cheated on me, or I'm angry and a victim because I didn't get to go to this school dance when I was young. It's all the same feeling of poison that you are literally ingesting voluntarily because it makes you special.
Remember when I was going to that support group at the eating disorders clinic, I remember thinking to myself, this is like a suffering competition.
Oh, and that is such a marker of anorexia and narcissism, right?
But I didn't understand I didn't do anything with that insight. I could recognise that I was so engaged with my own level of suffering.
Well, you weren't humble enough yet to actually, you know, again, the humbling process, that's what it took for you to actually...
Massive.
Oh, yeah, you have to be willing to die.
Yeah.
I know, that's kind of extreme. But it's true.
Thank you, Robin.
Hey, that's right. That's right. I just kicked ass.
Reschedule, perhaps leave it a bit longer.
Yeah.
This time.
Yeah, let's give it a week or 2 weeks and just see how you're doing. That works for me.